Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. Blood streamed down Peter's aged face as he was dragged by Roman soldiers to the place of his execution, not for an ordinary crucifixion, but for an inverted cross. His final request shocked even his executioners. "I am not worthy to die as my Lord did. If you must crucify me, do it upside down." Elsewhere in the world, Bartholomew screamed in agony as his skin was torn from his body. And even in the face of such torture, his last words were not of hatred or vengeance, but of forgiveness and unshakable faith. These men had no power, wealth, or human recognition. They were fishermen, tax collectors, craftsmen, ordinary men. Yet their final words, spoken through groans in dark dungeons, beneath the weight of the cross, or amid the flames of cruel pyres, have echoed through the centuries as living testimonies of a truth greater than life itself. What drove 12 simple men to face such brutal deaths without denying their faith? What kind of conviction sustains someone even as their body is torn apart? What do their final pleas reveal about what they saw, heard, and believed? In Rome, while the city burned under the terror of Nero, the emperor who set fire to his own capital and blamed the Christians for the disaster, Peter awaited his sentence in the damp depths of a prison. His hair and beard, once dark, were now white as snow. His hands, which had once held fishing nets and healed the sick, trembled with the weight of age and persecution. But his eyes, they still burned with the same fire as when he walked on water beside the Master. That morning, as he was taken from his cell, Peter knew the end had come. But to him it was not the end. It was the beginning of eternity. When the cross was lifted upside down on Vatican Hill, no curse or cry of despair was heard, only a call. "Remember the love of Christ," he murmured through searing pain. "Love one another as he loved us." His final moments were a humble prayer. "Lord, I was not worthy to see your face on this earth. Allow me now to behold it in heaven." Thus departed the one Jesus called the Rock. Not a rock because of strength or power, but for a faith that did not bend before sword, fire, or cross. A faith that endures to this day, echoing in the lives of those who, like Peter, found something worth living for, and if necessary, dying for. The end of James, son of Zebedee and brother of John, was marked by courage and loyalty. He was the first of the apostles to shed blood for the faith just 11 years after Christ's crucifixion. His execution was ordered by Herod Agrippa I, who, seeking to please the Jewish religious leaders, decided to eliminate him as a symbol of the growing Christian threat. Imprisoned in Jerusalem, James was brought to trial. According to ancient accounts, one of his accusers, moved by the apostles' unshakable peace and steadfast faith, was deeply touched. In front of all, this man shocked the court by declaring himself a Christian, knowing full well it might cost him his life. When James was led to the execution site, the same accuser, now a convert, approached with tears in his eyes and asked for forgiveness for having denounced him. James embraced him, smiled, and said calmly, "Peace be with you, my brother." That same afternoon, the two were executed together, not as enemies, but as brothers united by faith. Facing imminent death, James did not cry out for deliverance or attempt to flee. His final words echoed those of Jesus on the cross. "Father, forgive them and receive my spirit." A complete surrender, marked not by pain, but by hope. Among all the apostles, only John met a different end. He did not die by sword or cross, but endured a different kind of martyrdom, the weight of survival. Exiled to the island of Patmos by Emperor Domitian, John was the last of the 12. He outlived all his brothers in faith and saw with his own eyes the persecution intensify, churches suffer, and times grow darker. Already elderly, he returned to Ephesus, where he spent the final years of his life. Too weak to walk, he was carried by fellow Christians to the church gatherings. Though frail in body, his voice still carried both authority and tenderness as he repeatedly offered the same exhortation: "Little children, love one another." One day, someone asked him why he always said the same words. He replied, "Because it is the commandment of the Lord, and if it is fulfilled, nothing else is needed." Before his death, John made one final request, that he be buried with his hands open and empty. He said that just as he had brought nothing into the world, he wished to depart showing that his only treasure was the love of Christ. Such was the end of the sons of Zebedee, one a martyr from the beginning, the other a guardian of hope until the end. Their stories, as different as they are complementary, continue to challenge us. How far are we willing to go for what we claim to believe? Peter, James, and John, the trio closest to Jesus during his earthly ministry, stood by the Master in pivotal moments like the Transfiguration and Gethsemane. In the end, each faced a different fate, but all held firm to the same unshakable faith. Yet these are only a few among many stories of courage and faithfulness. The fates of the other apostles also bear witness to a faith that defied empires, crossed borders, and triumphed over the fear of death. Andrew, brother of Peter, and the first to be called by Jesus, became a tireless missionary. He brought the gospel northward, crossing Asia Minor and reaching the lands of the Scythians, regions that today encompass Ukraine and southern Russia. According to ancient accounts, he founded the church in Byzantium, where centuries later Constantinople would rise, the spiritual heart of the Byzantine Empire. His martyrdom occurred in Patras, Greece. Confronted by the governor Aegeas, who demanded that he offer sacrifices to the Roman gods, Andrew firmly replied, "I offer sacrifices every day, not with the blood of animals, but with the spotless Lamb who gave himself on the cross out of love." Angered by his refusal, the governor ordered him to be scourged and then crucified. To prolong his suffering, he was bound, rather than nailed, to a cross shaped like an X, which would later become the symbol of his witness, the cross of St. Andrew. When Andrew saw the cross that awaited him, he did not falter. Instead, he approached it with reverence and declared, "O blessed cross, consecrated by the body of my Lord, before Christ you were a symbol of curse, but now transformed by redemption, you are to me a throne of glory. Long have I desired you. I come to you in peace, in joy. Receive me, a disciple of the one who hung upon you." For 2 entire days, Andrew hung upon that cross, tirelessly preaching to the crowd that had gathered. His words were not of despair, but of hope, calling all to repentance and faith. Moved by public outcry, the governor eventually offered him release, but Andrew refused, steadfast in his resolve to complete his testimony. His final cry rang out with power, "Do not deprive me of the crown I already see before me. If you fear divine justice, do not dare to hinder my meeting with the Lord." And so, with his heart full of faith and his lips in prayer, Andrew gave up his spirit, sealing his life with the same devotion with which he had followed Christ from the very beginning. Philip, a native of Bethsaida, like Peter and Andrew, dedicated himself to preaching in the regions of Phrygia and Syria. In Hierapolis, in modern-day Turkey, his message stirred up anger among the worshippers of a great serpent revered as a local deity. Confronting this idolatry, he was arrested by pagan priests and the Roman proconsul, who sentenced him to crucifixion. Like Peter, Philip made a unique request, that his body not be embalmed. "My Lord was wrapped in linen and myrrh. I am not worthy of greater treatment than he declared. Even while nailed to the cross, Philip did not stop proclaiming his faith, encouraging the believers who wept around him. "Do not weep for me," he said. "This death is the gateway to eternal life." His final wish was moving, that a vine be planted over his tomb, so that its fruit may nourish future generations and serve as a reminder that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Bartholomew, also called Nathanael, the one Jesus praised by saying, "Here is a true Israelite in whom there is no deceit," carried the gospel through many lands. Asia Minor, Mesopotamia, Persia, reaching as far as India and Armenia. It was in Armenia that he faced the wrath of Astyages, the brother of King Polemius, who had converted because of Bartholomew's preaching. As punishment, Bartholomew suffered one of the most brutal martyrdoms. He was flayed alive and then beheaded. Even in the midst of excruciating pain, he did not stop proclaiming his faith. Accounts state that while his skin was being torn away, he recited psalms and exhorted the Christians present to remain steadfast. His final prayer, directed to God, was not for relief, but for transformation. Lord, may my suffering produce faith in the hearts of those who witness it. These men crossed borders, endured persecution and torment to proclaim a message that would change history. While Philip, Bartholomew, and others sealed their faith with blood, the remaining apostles continued their mission in other parts of the world, equally remarkable destinies. If you believe that the love of Christ is greater than any challenge, declare, "My God is greater than my battles," and proclaim your faith. Thomas, the disciple who once sought proof of the resurrection, would become the apostle to travel the farthest. According to ancient traditions, he brought the gospel to Parthia, Persia, and finally to India, where he founded churches that still exist today, known as the St. Thomas Christian communities. In the city of Kalamina, modern-day Chennai, he converted the wife and son of a king, provoking the fury of the Brahmin priests. Condemned to death, he was taken to the top of a hill to be executed by spears. Facing his execution, Thomas asked for a moment to pray. Kneeling, he offered his final plea. "Lord, forgive these men and receive my soul. May the gospel flourish in this land, even watered by my blood." Pierced by spears, Thomas, the former doubter, sealed his newfound certainty with his death. Centuries later, Portuguese sailors would find Christians in India who attributed their faith to that apostle's mission, a sign that his prayer had been answered. Matthew, the former tax collector who wrote the first gospel, began his mission in Judea and eventually carried Christ's message to Ethiopia and other regions of Africa. Contrary to his past marked by greed, Matthew embraced a life of great simplicity after following Jesus. He slept on the ground, ate only vegetables, and drank water, living a life of renunciation. In Ethiopia, he faced two magicians, Zaroas and Arphaxad, who used illusions to deceive King Agypus. Matthew exposed their tricks and led the royal family to the Christian faith. However, after the king's death, his successor, Eutychus, wished to marry Iphigenia, the former king's niece, who had taken a vow of Christian chastity under Matthew's guidance. Refusing to persuade the young woman to break her spiritual commitment, the apostle incited the new king's wrath, who then ordered his execution. During the celebration of a service, Matthew was ambushed and struck from behind. Though gravely wounded, he made a final moving request. "Place my Bible in the hands of the next convert. The word will live on even when I am no longer here." James, son of Alphaeus, also known as James the Less, to distinguish him from James, son of Zebedee, carried out his ministry primarily in Syria and Palestine. After years of preaching in Jerusalem, he went to Egypt, where he won many hearts for Christ in Alexandria. Upon returning to Jerusalem, he faced severe opposition from the religious authorities. According to ancient accounts, he was taken to the top of the temple and pressured to publicly renounce his faith in Jesus. Instead, he raised his voice and proclaimed the divinity of Christ before the crowd. Filled with rage, the leaders pushed him from the pinnacle. Still alive, even after the fall that broke his bones, James began to pray for his attackers. His final words echoed those of his master. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." A soldier, moved by this display of forgiveness, tried to stop the stoning, but another man struck James with a fuller's club, ending the apostle's martyrdom. 3 men, 3 stories, 3 transformations. Thomas, the doubter who became a courageous missionary. Matthew, the tax collector who embraced simplicity and service. James, the quiet one who gave his life proclaiming the faith in the heart of Jerusalem. All of them died far from their native lands, away from comfort, but deeply aligned with the purpose that gave meaning to their lives. Our journey is not yet over. 3 apostles remain, lesser known, but with stories of sacrifice just as powerful. What happened to them reveals how deep the commitment of these men was to the message that transformed their lives. If you are going through struggles and need to renew your strength, comment, "Jesus is my refuge." Share your testimony. We want to pray for you. Before meeting Jesus, Simon was called the Zealot, a member of an insurgent group fighting against Roman rule. From a guerrilla ready to die for his people, he became a missionary willing to die for Christ. According to ancient traditions, he traveled through North Africa, then to Britain, and eventually reached Persia. There, he met Jude Thaddius, and together they faced fierce opposition from Zoroastrian priests who accused them of defying the worship of the sun and fire. When they refused to take part in pagan rituals, they were taken to the Temple of the Sun for execution. Simon, who once wielded the sword for earthly causes, now surrendered to the call of heaven. When asked for his final wish, he replied firmly, "May the Son of Righteousness, Jesus Christ, shine in the hearts of those who today spill our blood." He was then sawn in half, sealing with a cruel death the faith he now carried with conviction. Jude Thaddius, also called Lebbaeus, or simply Jude, not Iscariot, stood out for his courage. It was he who asked Jesus during the Last Supper, "Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world?" After preaching the gospel in Mesopotamia, Syria, and finally Persia, he met his end alongside Simon. As the executioners prepared for the final blow, Jude made a request that surprised even his executioners. "Do not pray for me, but for the souls who have not yet known the true God." He was killed by spears and axe blows. Yet according to accounts, his face remained serene, like that of someone who had finally found peace after a long journey. Matthias, chosen to take Judas Iscariot's place after his betrayal and death, may be the least remembered among the 12 apostles. After the disciples were scattered, he began his ministry in Judea, later moving to Cappadocia and the regions near the Caspian Sea. He eventually returned to Jerusalem, where he was captured and tried by the Sanhedrin. Unlike Stephen, who was stoned in a chaotic mob attack years earlier, Matthias faced a formal execution. He was stoned and then beheaded, in accordance with the punishment prescribed by Jewish law for those deemed blasphemers. Before his death, Matthias offered a prayer that reflected his role as the one who would complete the number of the 12. "Lord, may my death conclude the testimony begun in my life. Receive me among your own." Over the years, these 12 ordinary men, fishermen, tax collectors, revolutionaries, people without prestige or formal training, found in Jesus something they considered more valuable than their very lives. They spread out to the farthest corners of the known world. They faced imprisonment, exile, torture, and violent deaths, and not one of them denied their faith. Not one turned back from the mission entrusted to them. Their final words reveal more than courage in the face of death. They reveal transformation. Men who once argued over seats of honor now pleaded for forgiveness for their persecutors. Those who had abandoned Jesus in Gethsemane now embraced their own crosses with boldness. Those who once doubted had become unshakable pillars of faith. What's most astounding is not the brutality of the deaths they suffered, as horrific as they were, but that they faced them with peace in their hearts, fully convinced they had found something eternal. These men could have denied their faith and gone on living. They could have remained silent and died peacefully years later in their own beds. But instead, they chose martyrdom. Why? Because they had witnessed something that changed their lives forever: the resurrection of Jesus Christ. How can we explain that 12 men who had walked closely with Jesus were willing to endure brutal torture and violent deaths, insisting to their final breath that they had seen him risen? What kind of message has the power to turn frightened fishermen into fearless martyrs? What truth is so powerful that it is worth dying for? The question that remains for us today is both simple and challenging. What did these men see that we have yet to perceive? What did they understand that we still haven't grasped? If ordinary people like them could impact the world through their faith and complete surrender, what could we accomplish with the same faith? In an age that quickly forgets its heroes, may we remember these 12 apostles not just for how they died, but for how they lived, committed to something greater than themselves, transformed by their encounter with the living Christ. You've just discovered the incredible faith and courage of the apostles who changed the course of history. But the journey doesn't end here. Click the video on the screen and uncover 15 shocking facts about life in Sodom. Stories of women who seduced even angels in a complete and revealing documentary. Watch now, and we'll see you soon.